Bitcoin allows you to be your own bank, but nobody told you that being your own bank is easy. It's pretty much hard, but it pays off.
The eventual goal is to never sell your Bitcoin, and you live on borrowing against it, just like people do now.
Bitcoin lending space is still pretty niche, I would say. It's pretty new. Lenders who are in the market, they understand that that's a huge cost and opportunity, and that the borrowers are not willing to sell their Bitcoin.
Hey everyone, quick thing before we start. Over 50,000 of you keep coming back to watch and listen to this podcast, but over 65% of you still haven't subscribed yet. So here's my simple ask. If you find value in my Bitcoin content and you enjoy what I'm doing, please take a second to hit subscribe on YouTube or follow me on your go-to podcasting app. It's a small action that really helps push my content through the algorithm, and this way we can make sure that more people learn about Bitcoin. Thanks for being part of this journey. Now let's dive into this episode. All right, Max Kai, welcome to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Thank you for having me. Hey, Bram.
Hey man, well, thanks so much for coming on. I think it's really interesting what you are building, so we're definitely going to chat about that. But first, I wanted to start with, I think I can call you a Bitcoin OG. You've been active in this space for some time, and you've been building different companies. And I just want to start with the question, what was your aha moment coming into Bitcoin?
Uh, yeah, I don't like the. I kind of like the term OG, but I kind of don't like it because I think that there's like a lot of people saying that they're OGs, but eventually they're just for a couple of years in Bitcoin and in the space. I mean, my aha moment was I'm a former banker, so I need to confess I did that multiple times already on several other podcasts, but I'm a former banker, and I was always fascinated by fintech. And at some point, I think it was 2014. One of my customers introduced me to the idea of Bitcoin, which I found at that time was crazy. Um, but I started to do my research, and next meeting we had a conversation with him, and he literally showed me in real time how he transferred 10,000 worth of Bitcoin to his friend in Brazil in a matter of like literally seconds while we were sitting in the meeting room. And at that point, I remember thinking that, okay, this thing is going to make me obsolete as a banker. And I need to do something about it. And I quickly realized that Bitcoin is like the essence of the fintech, because it's like money, code, everything is in one place. And yeah, probably that was my moment, seeing the transaction in real time happening during very short meeting, and money being transferred without any intermediaries. So that was my moment.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, I've also worked in banking, and I've also shared a lot. Like one of my aha moments was actually when someone that I work with told me, "Did you know that the money in the bank is not yours?" And when he explained to me in the hour after, I just felt like an idiot, not understanding the financial system, and still, having a mortgage and working at a bank and already being into Bitcoin. And so, I mean, I've confessed that many times that I did the banking oath, right? You can say like I'm a former bank,
Yeah,
former banker.
yeah, yeah.
But I love the example of sending Bitcoin, right? Like this is one of the things that I've now really integrated when I talk with people. I just say like, hey, download a wallet. I'll send you some sats. And like it's just instant, but also the idea of final settlement, like not many people, I've also learned this term like later on, right? But like I really send it to you, like it's not mine anymore, and it's really with you, like it's in this wallet, well, in, air quotes, in the wallet. But um it's not like a number on a screen like in your banking app, and that I still find fascinating, that people don't realize that this number on the screen is just a number in a centralized
Yeah.
database, and it literally does not represent anything. Yeah, it represents debt, and then some people say, well, that's where the value of the money comes from.
Yeah.
um but yeah, once you realize what the units of Bitcoin are, and that you can just send them anywhere without any intermediary, yeah, then I think the utility comes to the surface, and people are still actually pretty mind blown by that. And I think a lot about when I was younger and like SMS came out. I used to play like football on the field with my friends, and we used to, when we had like a first mobile phones, we used to send text messages from one goal to the other, and we would like envision these messages being invisible and floating in the air and like landing in the other phone. That feeling, that's what I have. Like every time I do a transaction like that, I think like this just it's like you take a package and you drop it in another device. It's still really
Yeah.
magical.
Yeah. It's very magical. I mean, Bitcoin is magical. That's definitely, magic internet money. Um, it like there's never a boring day or a boring moment in Bitcoin. I mean, there's always something happening.
100%. Yeah, I fully agree. I learn something new every week. But what you said, I found interesting. Like, oh, this is gonna make my job obsolete. You were kind of like, oh, this is crazy. Do you now understand, or did you later understand, like what kind of beliefs prevented you from being curious initially? Like, what is it that makes people like um dismiss it so quickly?
I would say for me it was like a lack of information. I was in my own bubble, and I didn't know what Bitcoin is. So that was my like orange pill moment. Someone who just explained to me the concept and just talk with me and show this new technology. But I mean, a lot of people. What preventing people is that, I mean, some people are angry and sad because they kind of missed the opportunity. At least they think that. But I don't know. I mean, a lot of people they just don't like. They don't want to self-educate themselves, and they're just happy with the things how they are going. And but I think, I mean, in general, my perception, seeing and speaking with people who doesn't own any Bitcoin, is just that most of them are sad because they missed an opportunity. There's always something like, yeah, I should have bought it like back in the days. It's too late, but it's actually not too late. I mean, we're still very much early, and yeah. So and again, a lot of people they just prefer the convenience of centralized system. I mean, I wouldn't say that Bitcoin is inconvenient, but I would say Bitcoin uh, definitely makes you more responsible for your own money, because you need to understand how to store your keys. You need to understand how to secure your seed phrase. You need to understand some of the basic concepts, and that's something that a lot of people they just don't want to take that responsibility. I mean, it's easier for them if they're like forget the PIN code from their card or forget the code or password from their banking app. It's easier for them to just call the bank or go to the bank and restore the access. Well, with Bitcoin, if you lose your keys, you lose your Bitcoin, and that's a big responsibility. I
Yeah.
mean, my favorite one of my favorite quotes is that someone told me that Bitcoin allows you to be your own bank, but nobody told you that being your own bank is easy. I mean,
That's
it's
very
it's
true.
it's pretty much hard, but it pays off. Freedom and independent doesn't come easy. So, I mean, I would encourage just to learn some basics and start going deeper to the rabbit hole, as we say.
Bitcoin custody is evolving. And while self custody is important, it has its own risks and trade offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your custody setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi signature vault, guarded by 3 independent institutional grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control. Your funds are fully auditable on chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Check out onrampbitcoin.com through the link below and schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to get to know them and learn more about their offering. Well, I mean, this is also one of the parts that makes it so difficult to, I think, fully adopt Bitcoin, right? Like what you said, just the entire idea of I'm too late, I could have been early, etc. Like that is really fiat thinking, like zero sum thinking, like someone else wins when I lose, etc. Whereas Bitcoin is a mutually beneficial game. I would say I heard Jeff Booth say it's uh, cooperative competitiveness, which I really liked as well. But it's just that way of thinking, right? Like just zero sum thinking, and also saying, and I've also had many people say like, oh well, but if I have this amount of Bitcoin, I'm like solely responsible of keeping it safe, and I'm like, yeah, and then they're like, I don't really like that, but people never realize what outsourcing the responsibility actually
Yeah.
implicates, right? And
Yeah.
the fact that the number that you, again, like the number that you look at in your banking app is not a real thing, but you take that for granted, right? So it's a total unconscious choice, I think. And when you propose Bitcoin, you have to make the conscious decision to become your own bank, and that is something that most of the people never have done. I would say
Yeah.
no one has ever done until
Yeah.
they decide to do it, right? And I think that's just why it's really hard. Like you never thought about like how it works, and so that's
But I mean, the space is also developing, so we see more and more like returning to the question of like storing safely your Bitcoin. There's more and more different options and services that provide you ease of use and peace of mind, and they can help you restore the keys, or they can help you gain access to your funds. So eventually, we will move in that direction, but we will move in that direction in a Bitcoin way, meaning that you will not store your Bitcoin in a single sig. You're probably going to use multi-sig, where like two, like let's imagine 2 out of 3 multi-sig, where you hold one key and 2 other keys are stored within the institutions. This is what many companies in space are doing at the moment, and I mean, I think we're moving in that direction.
yeah.
And yeah,
And so when someone that you just said magic internet money, right? So if someone asks you why is Bitcoin such a big idea? Or why do you enjoy spending your time on it? Or why did you decide to spend your time on it? What's your answer?
and I'm not a technical person, so I treat Bitcoin purely from the perspective of uh, economical, political, and social impact. So for me, I would say, first of all, it's your money. I mean, Bitcoin is like true and the essence of the private property. I mean, nobody can take it from you. Again, with the small remark, if you can hold your keys properly, like, and that's the purest form of private property at the moment. I mean, even real estate or any other asset you have there could be taken by the government or by whatever, but it could be taken. I mean, Bitcoin allows you to store it. The second thing is that you can interact with other individuals without having any green light from any other authority. Like we can just send to each other sats because we decided to do so, and we don't care. And the third thing is probably that um, it's like not controlled by anyone. It's that's one of the most important things. You know, you cannot manipulate Bitcoin. You can manipulate the price, of course. There's some whales, but again, and large entities that holding Bitcoin. But again, it's pretty much into the game theory. Another concept which I learned when I started researching the Bitcoin. I mean, nobody is interested economically into taking Bitcoin price down or harming Bitcoin. And as soon as you will become the participant of that, let's say chain or web of trust or web of no trust, I mean, as soon as you will become the participant of all this, you will quickly understand that okay, there's like miners, users, node operators, exchanges, etc., etc., and everyone is interested actually for Bitcoin to be developed in a proper way, pretty much conservatively, without any external pushes, and to stay as much independent as it is. I mean, layers on top of Bitcoin can be non-independent. We have these centralized entities, exchanges, we have businesses that operate on the top of Bitcoin. They are, of course, centralized. Most of them, if not all of them, are centralized. But Bitcoin itself is pretty much decentralized. So these are like three aspects that I mentioned that like makes me excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, I love that part about incentives, because also, by the way, I think if you build on top of that base layer of Bitcoin, you still have to adhere to the principles and values. Like you can still try to play like Ponzi games or whatever, but um, just the forced transparency that the Bitcoin base layer like forces upon you, yeah, makes that you cannot really try these classic financial tricks that can only be done because the base layer of finance is obscured in general, right? Of traditional finance. So that's why you can do stuff on
Yeah,
top of it um, that's criminal or deceiving or whatever. I think on Bitcoin, it will definitely be tried, but eventually it's just not. Your biggest incentive is to not do it and to just contribute to this trustless network, as you mentioned. People will try. I mean,
yeah.
but
People are always trying. Every cycle we see some companies,
yeah,
doing this mumbo jumbo
yeah,
and
yeah,
failing.
yeah,
Some of them actually staying afloat. But I mean, eventually, of course, we have all this institutional adoption, mass market, and these are they're different requirements. And I mean, a lot of people or some people and companies in the space, they're not happy with all the things that are happening. But I mean, that's probably part of Bitcoin evolution. If you want to get to the pocket of any individual on the planet, probably you need to go through the level of where there's first institutions, then there's like small to medium companies, and then there's individuals. And there's individuals, again, individuals in more developed countries than the individuals in developing countries, or maybe even the other way. But I mean, it just it's inevitable in a way that there's a certain cycle of adoption, and we're just going through that cycle whether you like it or not.
yeah,
And that's one of the things about Bitcoin that I also like. It can be used by your enemies, and you cannot do anything about that. You can hate people or companies that using Bitcoin, that are profiting from Bitcoin. You can do whatever you want, but you cannot on your personal level. I
mm,
mean, your emotions are your emotions. Nobody can control them except for you, but you cannot do anything in particular about that.
yeah.
So that's the cool thing about Bitcoin.
I agree. I also I say a lot like I'm also kind of sad that the finance bros figured this out, but I mean, it's all part of the path, and again, like people will mess around along the way, and they will get burned in their tricks and whatever, and then it's the just like the market is the market is the market is like the path is the path is the path, right? Like this thing is never going away,
Yeah.
and so I think that's the main thing people should focus on. Like it's running for 15 plus years, and that's basically it. Like that's the entire premise. The entire premise is that anyone that adopts Bitcoin is incentivized to contribute to it. That's what keeps it alive. That's what makes it stronger, gets in more people to contribute to it, etc. Right. And so um, for me, that's kind of like the anchor to kind of like cut through the weekly or daily or monthly noise around whoever adopts it or says something about it or whatever. But yeah, I mean the traditional finance adoption I think is really interesting, and I'd love to talk about that. But the first I wanted to talk about what you're building with Debify. You're building a Bitcoin backed lending platform, using Bitcoin
Yes.
as the collateral. Can you explain why Bitcoin is like the most pristine collateral? Is that what you just mentioned, like no counterparty risk, the absolute scarcity, etc.? Like, is it pristine because it's actually very predictable plus um, liquid, or how would you explain that?
Like pristine collateral. Yes, I like the term super collateral because I believe like Bitcoin is the best collateral out there, and it's like super collateral. So yeah, first of all, it's highly liquid. I mean, if you will look from the perspective of the lender, because with Debify we have built a platform that actually has we have two user bases. One user base is lender, and another user base is our borrowers. And lenders, um, they really like, but not many TradeFi lenders still understand that Bitcoin is a highly liquid collateral. If you will compare it with any other collateral out there, let's say real estate, if your borrower fails to repay the loan, let's say the mortgage, you get dragged along for months or even years trying to get some money from that real estate. With Bitcoin, market works 24/7. You can liquidate it basically in seconds, in minutes and hours. You can keep it to yourself. You can do whatever you want. And then that's number one, highly liquid collateral. Number two, I would say it's a global. I mean, you don't need to, um, like, again, real estate, you need to have either company or a branch in another country, or you need to travel to another country. With Bitcoin, I mean, you can work with any individual or any company out in the world where you're allowed to work. So it's a global, it's digital, it's programmable, and that's another amazing thing about Bitcoin, that you can create different type of solutions that will store that collateral, that will help you to manage that collateral. We are doing this through multisig. There are other like technologies that allows you to do that for various reasons and for various use cases. And I would say it's also very transparent. So I mean, you can always verify the collateral sits in particular address, and it's not being replicated. That's amazing thing. But there's like a bunch of things, and of course, scarcity of Bitcoin and finite supply, and that Bitcoin actually over the time it's becoming more and more valuable. That's also a very important thing. And again, all the things that I mentioned, it's your private property, meaning that even when you're borrowing against your Bitcoin, you still can have certain access and some certain control over that collateral if you're using non-custodial solutions such as Debify, for example. And it also allows you to avoid the middleman. I mean, what we're doing with Debify is that we provide a tech solution for lenders and borrowers to interact directly with each other. So we're not acting as a middleman. We just provide a platform where borrowers can meet lenders and borrow against their Bitcoin. So there's a bunch of different things, but I would say, yeah, different user base, different user types, different things. But I mean, Bitcoin is a super thing if we're talking about lending.
Yeah. Yeah, what I love is that it's a global market. You know, like if you want to use certain type of real estate as collateral in country X, you probably the majority of possible lenders can only be found in that country. Perhaps there's other lenders that are in surrounding countries, but
Yeah,
no one is gonna, if you're in Europe, no South Korean lender is gonna give you money for your, random Austrian real estate, right?
yeah,
Whereas uh, they would probably lend you money if you have Bitcoin, and then they don't really care where you're located, and you don't really care where the money comes from, basically. And so I
yeah. And
I
the
love
good,
that.
I mean, one of the good things is also you actually don't need a credit score to borrow against your Bitcoin because most of the loans are over collateralized, meaning that let's say you're borrowing 5 million, you need to put in like 10 million worth of Bitcoin. So the lender pretty much doesn't care whether you can pay off that loan because he already understands that if you will fail to repay, he will just take your collateral and liquidate it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Whereas with mortgages, or if you have any excess value in a home, right? You're levered up to the total value of the home, basically, right? So uh, the loan to value is almost always 100% because you borrow
Yeah.
exactly the
Yeah.
amount of the value of the home. Yeah, I think that's
I
interesting.
mean, the mortgage is one thing, but there's even worse collateral out there, which is hope,
Yeah.
and that's what's backing credit cards in a modern society. I mean, like
Well, it's backing the entire
banks are,
money, right? The hope of the debt,
yeah,
the
like
debt
I mean,
being.
banks are hoping that you will repay them and you will not lose your job or your source of income,
Hmm.
and they're just providing you a credit card loan,
Yeah.
and they're doing this actually with enormously high interest rate. Like the average interest rate, last time I checked, which was a couple months ago, in US, the average interest rate for credit cards was around 28% per year.
Yeah, crazy. But that's because the risk is so high, because it's based on,
Yeah,
yeah,
hope.
hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hope.
very, very good
Yeah,
point. I mean, that also shows uh these characteristics of Bitcoin. Like, if I would put up my Bitcoin as collateral, like, I know what I'm putting up, right? So I,
yeah,
I'm 100% incentivized to pay whatever my payments are, right? Or whatever I owe if I would have a credit card, for example, where I put up Bitcoin as collateral. So um, I think that also creates a kind of more equal relationship to any issuer and any borrower, right? Because with I think traditional finance, like just credit cards, yeah, like if you default, they're coming for everything you have, or at any cost. Although it's super inefficient, obviously, but that's kind of like how that system is now. So I think that transparency of Bitcoin is immediately shown in products like this. Yeah. If you have your Bitcoin in self custody, where are you keeping your Bitcoin seed words? For me, there's only one way, and it's backing up my seed phrase with stamp seed. It's a single durable plate without any parts or materials. Stamp your words into solid titanium, which is fire resistant, water resistant, and built to last. Unlike etching or engraving, stamp seed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, making it easy for you to protect your generational wealth. Don't risk losing your seed phrase on paper. Get a stamp seed plate for unmatched protection. You can use code BRAM, that's BRAM, for 15% off at stampseed.com. How do you envision kind of like the integration with TradFi then, and like traditional kind of like risk management practices. For example, like with Bitcoin, you have the volatility that will probably go down over the years, but still, can you explain a little bit about that? Like how does that?
I mean, I wouldn't say that Bitcoin volatility is that high. It's not high anymore if you'll compare to some
Not
stocks,
my words,
like
not my
the considering more traditional, or if you will check the long term performance. What we're doing with Debify is basically, as I said, it's basically a peer-to-peer marketplace where lenders meeting the borrowers. So we're not acting as a lenders. Basically, it's like an eBay for Bitcoin loans.
yeah
You have from one side lenders and from other side borrowers. So the lenders on Debify can only be institutional. So what we're doing, we're building a product and a platform that will be appealing to the trade fight, like market participants, like funds, family offices, banks, whatever. So those entities that they have liquidity, and they understand like lending market, and they understand the lending business, but they don't understand Bitcoin, or they do understand Bitcoin, but they don't understand how to build a proper, lending solution, taking bearing in mind all the core values and principles that we have in Bitcoin. In holding your keys, being non-custodial, no replication, transparency, peer-to-peer, etc., etc., etc. We are basically doing all the tech heavy lifting for them, and we're providing them with the platform where they can plug and play in like 3 5 working days. We will onboard them, and if you have liquidity, you can go and afloat your liquidity using Bitcoin as a collateral, and providing loans to corporate entities, private individuals, whatever you prefer. Or if you have a preference for a certain market, we can ensure that you will cover only the certain market. So this is what we're doing. That's basically our offer to the lenders, and eventually to the trade world. And eventually, what we want to have is, we want to make Debify as a global loan book or lending aggregator. And again, it's not necessarily TradeFi. We have some companies that are already been operating in the Bitcoin space, but they didn't have a proper tools how to ensure that if they lend out money, then they are sure that Bitcoin is not being replicated and there's no middleman. They can communicate directly with the borrower. So we envision that at certain point, Debify will become highly liquid global platform where Bitcoiners from any part of the world can go online if they have Bitcoin, and they don't want to sell it, they want to borrow against that. They will have like tens or even hundreds of different offers with different currencies, with different terms, and they will be able to choose what they want, and they will be able to borrow from different institutions and different companies. Maybe if you're lucky, if your bank is already onboarded to Debify, you will be able to borrow from your bank. Uh, so that's our thing. We don't want to become lenders by ourselves. We want to ensure that banks and other TradeFi players are onboarded, and they're onboarded to the Bitcoin lending in a proper way, meaning there's multi-sig, meaning they hold their keys. We know that it's a long way, but we've been very successful with that. We already have like lenders who are coming from traditional finance world, like private funds, family offices. We're in talks with multiple banks at the moment. Hopefully gonna publish some interesting news soon. But I mean, we're getting there. It's still like building plus education, but with last year when BlackRock launched their ETF, I mean, a lot of TradeFi players, they started to educate themselves, and it's getting easier and easier to onboard them.
yeah. So could you run me like through an example, because I've talked a lot on the podcast about the eventual goal is to never sell your Bitcoin, and you live on borrowing against it, just like people do now that have like a Manhattan skyscraper, right? They don't sell like a floor of the skyscraper to then live off. So could you like run me through, um let's say you want to borrow, uh, let's say 100K, how much Bitcoin do you have to put up, or like roughly, and like how does it work? Do you do payments, or like how long does it run? Like, um, yeah,
Yeah, so if you have, let's say, you want to borrow 100K worth of stable coin or USD or euro, you go online to Debify, you create your account. You Debify is basically a mobile app that holds key to the escrow, and there's also a web interface that allows you to interact with the lenders and choose the offer that from the list of the offers. So it's like system with two pieces in that infrastructure. And you go online, you choose the loan offer that you prefer. I mean, let's say you can put 200K worth of Bitcoin, and you want to borrow 100K, which means that the LTV ratio, loan to value ratio, will be 50% in that case. So you go online, you find the offer that you like, um, you create an offer you accept that offer from the lender, and then you create a contract. You both create a multisig, which is uniquely created by your public keys, and also by Debify public key, and also there's a fourth key that has been used, which is used by our independent multisig partner, or authorized key holders, as we say. And you create an escrow or a multisig address on top of Bitcoin blockchain, and you send their Bitcoin that is acting as a collateral. And as soon as Bitcoin hits the address, we inform the lender that it's safe to transfer you stable coins, or it's safe to transfer you fiat. And then the lender just sends you money, whether to the stablecoin address or to bank account. For the moment, we have 12-month period for loans, like the maximum, but we're going to increase that period in the next few months to 24 months. And the repayment has been, we basically allowed the repayment to be done at the end of the period of the loan. So if you're borrowing for 12 months, pretty much simple. At the end of the period, you just need to repay the loan together with their interest. And when you repay it, the lender just signs the release transaction in your favor. We join the lender, you join us, and three signatures are enough to release the Bitcoin from the collateral. So the multisig work with the concept 3 out of 4, meaning there are 4 signature, but you need to have at least 3 in order to release collateral from the multisig.
yeah. And so because you have Bitcoin as the collateral, does that also mean that the interest rate generally is lower than what you would expect in
Mm-mm.
a more traditional?
Doesn't work like that.
How does?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Bitcoin lending space is still pretty niche, I would say. It's pretty new. And a lot of Bitcoiners, they think, okay, Bitcoin is a super thing, super asset. And I need to, I mean, lenders need to provide me with the interest rate, let's say 2%, because Bitcoin is a super thing. And it doesn't work like that. Lenders, and I actually, couple months ago, I published a quick post on X, for my Twitter, where I explained that, so imagine you have borrowed against your Bitcoin in September last year, when the price was what, 60,000. You borrowed against your Bitcoin for a year with an interest rate, let's say 16%. So by the end of the year 2024, you already generated, uh, what, from 60,000 to 100,000. What is the profit here? I mean, help me out with the math.
It's
So
like 66% from 60
yeah,
to 100.
yeah. So basically, you can easily repay your loan less than in less than half year. and but you borrow with like 16% and you generated 66, so you are 50% in profit. And sometimes if you're lucky enough, you can do that type of profit in a matter of weeks, not in a matter of months. I mean, it's always about choosing the right moment. So lenders, they do understand that Bitcoiners doesn't want to sell their Bitcoin. And they do understand that it's a huge cost of opportunity. I mean, you can sell your Bitcoin now when the price is 100K, but there's a high chance that in a year time, the price will be 200K and you will lose 100% returns. And in 4 or 5 years, it could be like some are saying it could be 1 million. So there's a huge cost of opportunity. And lenders who are in the market, they understand that that's a huge cost of opportunity and that the borrowers are not willing to sell their Bitcoin. Another thing which is very important to consider, that lenders, instead of getting 16% per year interest rate, they can just buy Bitcoin, sit on Bitcoin and generate 100%. Again, market conditions are different, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a third thing. In many countries, when you borrow against your Bitcoin, it's out of the any tax, uh, capital gain tax. So you're basically not paying anything. If you will sell your Bitcoin, you will be subject to capital gain tax, and in some countries it's higher than 20%, and it's higher than the interest rate that you will be getting on the if you will borrow against your Bitcoin. So there's a huge, enormous cost of opportunity with different consequences. And most of Bitcoiners understand that there's a huge cost of opportunity, but they don't understand that lenders also understand that. And they think that, okay, Bitcoin is a super thing. You need to, if I'm gonna borrow against Bitcoin, I'm gonna borrow with 2-3%. It's not gonna happen, at least anytime soon. And the reason for that is that the average interest rate on the market at the moment for Bitcoin backed loans is from 12 to 16%. And it's because the market is like that, you know? So, I mean, you can still dream about 2-3%. Fine. Good luck with that. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. And that's because again, huge cost of opportunity, where basically, I think you would agree with me, where basically in the bull market at the moment, and in the bull market, the least thing that you want to do is selling your Bitcoin. And the market understands that you don't want to sell your Bitcoin. And because of that, market will dictate the interest rate that they're happy to provide you in order for you to avoid the event when you need to sell your Bitcoin.
Yeah. So what do you think are the most like significant regulatory hurdles that face Bitcoin based financial services? Like I think this year is kind of like the year where we'll see um offerings like yours and just like more um I'd say I don't want to say experimentation, but like starting with the offering of Bitcoin financial services, etc. Are there any are there any challenges you see, but also are there any maybe policy changes or regulatory changes that could actually strengthen Bitcoin and this further proliferation of services?
Well, as a Bitcoiner, I would say there's no regulation that could strengthen Bitcoin. I mean, but as a Bitcoiner and as a CEO of the platform that appeals to institutional lenders, I would say that there's at least having the clear rules, in terms of regulation, in terms of taxation, in terms of KYC, AML, helps a lot. Because again, we need to navigate. I mean, Bitcoin is global, but platforms and services that are built on top of Bitcoin, most of them are pretty much segregated by markets. And I mean, when we're entering the market, we would like to understand what are the rules and what's the landscape of the regulation, et cetera, et cetera. And because there's no clear framework at the moment in many countries, it's still like you don't understand how it's going to be treated. Like it's still pretty much not clear. So Debify, the good thing about Debify, again, we're not lending money and we're not touching money. We're just providing a technical tools. So for us, it's a bit more easier to enter the market because we just need to find a regulated lender who is happy to provide loans and allowed to provide loans, and or non-regulated but legally allowed to do so, because in some countries for example, to provide business to business loan, you don't need to have any license. It's just a business to business loan. You're just using Bitcoin as a collateral. So in that case, I mean, for us it's a bit more easier. But again, like Mika this year, I would say from one side, it's um, it's pretty raw in terms that it's still a lot of things are not clear in that framework. But at least, I mean, there's some kind of regulation already available, some kind of rules available. And when we're talking with some European banks, they already start, they already kind of can navigate the regulatory landscape and those frameworks. 2 years ago, it was almost impossible. They would say like we don't know how to treat Bitcoin. We don't know how to put it on our balance sheet, or whether we need to put it on a balance sheet, et cetera, et cetera. So at least there's some clarity on that aspect. But again, it's again, it's like, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that, and I hope it will change this year, that a lot of regulation has been drafted and accepted without speaking with the Bitcoin community and people who actually understand how Bitcoin works. Sometimes it's just copy paste from TradeFi, and then you get what, like, really weird.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think Europe is asleep with regards to Bitcoin. I don't know, like they're trying things, but I think it's a pity. I mean, I think you agree if we say like this is the biggest technological evolution of our lifetimes, probably. Um,
Yeah,
at least on the money aspect, or finance, economics, etc. So, if that is your field of expertise and you're not into this, then yeah, I don't really don't know what you are into, right? So I
yeah,
think that you can create the biggest financial opportunity for any country or any block of countries by actually embracing this, because yeah, as you said, like as a Bitcoiner, we don't really need regulations, which I think I agree with. But if there are areas that embrace Bitcoin, I think they could actually flourish from it. I think, like, strategically, it would be really stupid to try to undermine this or ignore this. But then again, I think in Europe, in general, there's also this. Yeah, I call it a crisis of just the currency. Like they're trying to keep that afloat and alive, etc. And I think accepting Bitcoin also secondarily kind of like admits that um it's a solution to the problem that you created yourself by issuing a
yeah,
certain
yeah,
currency. So like that, the incentives there aren't really aligned. But I mean, just because Bitcoin exists, like I say a lot, like Bitcoin is a mirror. It's a mirror for traditional finance, for traditional types of regulations, policies, etc. And etc. And this thing is just code and math and basically speech,
yeah,
and it's everywhere, right? So you can argue against it, but you cannot really stop it.
yeah. It's at this point, I would say it's pretty much unstoppable. But even in Europe, there are still like some bright things. There's amazing country Switzerland, and their regulation in terms of Bitcoin in particular and digital assets in general is like pretty much amazing. I mean, I love Switzerland for that, and there's a reason why they've been like considered as a financial mecca through centuries. Like that's because they follow the new thing. That's because they embrace the new thing. And I mean, talking with Swiss people, I still hear like, well, we could do better. And I mean, we're still like lagging, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, like if you will compare Switzerland to European Union, you will understand that Switzerland is actually 10 years ahead of European Union. I would say in ahead of most of the countries in the world in terms of regulating Bitcoin and digital asset space. This is really amazing. You need to take an example from that.
Yeah. Well, this is a good bridge to my next question that I wanted to ask about like nation state Bitcoin adoption, because yeah, as I just said, like I think it is strategically probably the smartest decision to embrace any new technology that at least has shown that it has merit and
Yeah.
legs to stand on. I mean, after 15 plus years of Bitcoin, I think um, like you cannot ignore it anymore. You cannot dismiss it anymore. Like if you're intellectually honest in any way, you cannot do that anymore. And I think we will see that soon, or we are kind of seeing that also like on nation state level. I mean, this talks about American strategic Bitcoin reserve, but now actually this week we saw like a Swiss proposal. I think in Switzerland it works a bit differently, right? So there's this proposal that is kind I want to say approved to consult citizens, right? And there have to be like 100,000 signatures in order for there to be, I think it's a national referendum where the citizens then basically decide, should the Swiss National Bank add Bitcoin to the treasury? I think I explained that correctly, but please correct me if I'm
I haven't been
okay.
honestly. I've been to Switzerland last week, but I haven't been
Okay,
following
okay.
any
Well,
news. I've been just
yeah.
skiing.
Okay, nice. Yeah. So I think it works like that. But yeah, my question was like, what are your thoughts on nation state Bitcoin adoption? I think as I said, like I'm kind of sad that Finance Bros figured it out. I think it's interesting if countries adopt it. In general, I would love for more individuals to adopt it first. But again, the path is the path is the path. Yeah, what are your thoughts on nation state adoption?
I mean, it's definitely a positive thing. I would say I would support that. And I'm from Latvia, and for small countries such as like Latvia, which is like 2 million people, 2.5, and I would say that's a huge opportunity at the moment. I mean, those countries that will do that properly, first they will be ahead of most of the country in the world, most of the countries in the world. Like look at El Salvador. Whatever you say, but they have been like stacking one Bitcoin every day, and they have been so far very much right with their strategy. Or Bhutan, third largest Bitcoin holder. And I mean, I would, I'm really, really support. I think that, doing the national reserve is actually an opportunity for the countries that has been always playing the second, the third, the fourth role, become actually on the first, first in line. That's a huge opportunity, and that's actually no brainer, to be honest. I mean, that's a no brainer.
Yeah, I think it's
But
poetic.
that's no brainer. That's no brainer for us, for Bitcoiners. I mean, again, we are kind of in the bubble.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. Yeah.
we do this every day, and that's no brainer for us. But for many countries, and I think even if Switzerland will have a referendum, I would say there's a huge chance that a lot of people won't support that because they still don't understand, and they're still very conservative with.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll be cheering. for that.
Yeah.
But as one of the one of my friends said, I think I saw his comment. Like he said, I would prefer the nation state to lower taxes for the citizens, so we have more money to stack sats on the individual level, than spending my taxes to stack sats as a nation level. You know, that was a really good point. And at that point I started thinking maybe he's actually has a good point, and he's right.
Yeah.
But then again, if we're already paying taxes and they already been like spent, why not spend them wise way and create a strategic reserve which can be used and or for like profit of the whole nation.
Yeah.
So I would say if we choose a lesser evil, we're already paying taxes, they're already there. At least spend them partially on the things that could help my nation and my country to be among the first ones to embrace this thing and win in the future. So I would say I'm pretty much for national reserves.
I think I love what you said about like we think about this every day. For us, it's so rational. But when you really think about this idea of, um, as you said, these third, fourth, fifth rank type countries that have always kind of been looked down upon, right? Or like they actually have. I mean, I talked to Maya Parbu, who's going to run for presidency of Suriname. There's only 600,000 people actually. Um, like these countries could have like a golden age type moment, and for me, that doesn't even sound crazy to say because I really do believe that like if you adopt what is the new gold or the new oil or however you want to compare it to like other assets for you to understand, right? It just makes a lot of sense. It just makes so much sense that you should do it. And I think it's fascinating that a country like Bhutan is doing it. Like they, if you think about, I had a conversation about it also. Like in Oman, there's a mining operation with a Marathon, which is about like $1 billion of investments, right? And I talked to someone once, and we talked about like, oh, how serious is that? And he said like $1 billion. Do you know how much $1 billion is? Like even they drive in like golden Ferraris to their work, but still $1 billion is $1 billion, right? Like that's a serious thing. So they understand what this is, and they want to participate in it, and they want to capitalize on it, as in like they want to earn Bitcoin. And when you think about Bhutan, even if you have a small country or there's a small, it's just a smaller network of people that run the place. I mean, connecting it to a hydroelectric dam is not an easy feat. Like that's not a small a small decision, right? Like that's a big strategic
Yeah,
decision. And I think it's fascinating um that there are countries actually mining Bitcoin with government funded resources. Like we are already there, right? So
yeah,
if you talk about
yeah,
dismissing Bitcoin or thinking it's a fad or still calling it a Ponzi, like there's actual multiple companies mining Bitcoin with government resources. So yeah, I just almost want to say like, shut up,
but
shut up.
I think I would say that there's already like multiple governments and countries in the world that are actually silently stacking Bitcoin.
Yeah,
I honestly believe that there are countries that are actually trying to front run US now, because as soon as Donald Trump is in power, and if the things that has been circulating regarding the Bitcoin strategic reserve will come true, I would say that I think there are nation states at the moment who are like stacking Bitcoin just to front run US, and that would be pretty much logical for
yeah,
me. And I think yeah, it's like there's already like huge companies that has Bitcoin on the balance sheet. There's already countries that has Bitcoin on the balance sheet. There's a president of the United States of America, biggest economy in the world, saying that he's willing, or his intention is to explore or to create a Bitcoin national reserve I mean, what else you need to understand that this thing is here to
Yeah.
stay and it's gonna flourish and it's gonna I mean, how bearish you can be at this time. I mean, it's such an amazing thing
Yeah.
to be part of it and to watch how all the prophecies that has been circulating over the last 10, 15 years just coming true.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
That's the word. It's fascinating and it's entertaining. But as you said, like my explanation is always like I cannot imagine that you have the same thoughts as me around this, right? That we two figure this out. I cannot imagine that there's not people that are in an administration of a country that have also not figured it out, or that look at Bhutan and think like, why the hell is Bhutan mining Bitcoin? Do we have a hydroelectric dam? Do we have like solar power? Do we have like oil or volcano or whatever? Like we can do that too, right? Like it makes so much rational sense that I actually would be deeply surprised and disappointed, I don't know, or scared maybe to realize uh the how do you say the impotence perhaps of certain people running certain countries that they are not looking into Bitcoin, right? Like if you're not looking into Bitcoin, you're not doing your citizens any justice or your fiduciaries or whatever. Like it's unignorable. So yeah, I love that you see it too. And I'm just trying to humble myself. Like I'm probably not the only person that thinks this. So there have to be um countries that are stacking.
There's a lot of I think there's a lot of people thinking like that. Just doing in the silent way. Not screaming every
Yeah.
corner and.
So what's the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself going through, this Bitcoin journey for the past years?
Well, I have a lot of patience. That's and my stress levels are pretty much high. That's probably the thing that I learned about myself. And the interesting fact I learned about Bitcoin community is that um, I once read a memoir or memories of Steve Jobs, who was he was a young kid. I think that was the story. Maybe I'm taking I forgot it to some extent. But what he did, he wanted to call someone some kind of owner of the big company. I don't remember. It was Hewlett Packard or something like that. And he just took a telephone book and just found him in a public telephone book and called him.
Yeah.
He picked up the phone and they had a conversation. It was that simple. So in Bitcoin community, um, it's also that simple to basically reach any person out there for advice, for a comment, for everything. So that was my revelation about Bitcoiners in general. That it's true, as Matt Odell always says, stay humble. And I would say that Bitcoiners are actually a lot of Bitcoiners are humble, and a lot of Bitcoiners are just the regular people, and you can reach out to anyone and ask anyone about some things that you're interested in. And that's a very cool thing about Bitcoin community. This is something that I really like, and people are ready and happy to help you out in a way. uh, that's probably my revelation about the Bitcoin community. Of course, there's a lot of as we grow, there's a lot of people, as you said, with bad intentions who just want to, capitalize on Bitcoin. And of course, there's like sometimes I'm getting frustrated by the community that people, follow false prophets, as you might name them, and follow the false promises. But it just happens, it's just a
Yeah.
cycle. Yeah.
Well, I think what you share is this what we mentioned before, this mutually beneficial game. Like it's I feel the exact same feeling. I've spent a lot of years in like the tech and startup industry, and I think people are helpful there, but it's still like a fiat mind game. Whereas in Bitcoin, I feel that even as someone coming in, like I've been in Bitcoin for 10 years also, but just over a year ago, I started the podcast, and I mean, in that sense, I was super new and unknown, and I didn't really know people in the industry or people that were known or that I learned from, right? And I was just super surprised by how easily approachable everyone is. And I mean, I knew that from the tech space. Like I've had different experiences that, as you mentioned, like with the Steve Jobs as an example, where you just like reach out to someone and be like, "Hey, I like your work. Do you want to talk sometime?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." But in Bitcoin, I feel everyone understands that this is a mutually beneficial game. That when we talk and then you tell about your company here, you help yourself and you help me, and then whatever. Like it's all building on this same thing and trying to help manifest this into existence even further. And so
Yeah.
I feel in general it's like a really positive experience, which um I honestly don't think about a lot, but I do feel positive all the time. Like I don't feel this podcast is aimed at millennials. Sometimes I'm on like the millennial subreddit, um, and I see people are so anxious or like unsure about the future and like lots of nihilism and stuff. And I yeah, sometimes just realize like I don't really feel like that, which I'm very grateful for, right? But I really feel that's is because I adopted Bitcoin in my life, and I'm also trying to contribute to it in, you know, how I can do that, and you're doing that in, using your skills in that sense, and I think it's just really rewarding and so positive. So I love that you
Yeah,
highlighted that.
it
Yeah.
is.
Um.
It
So,
is.
what makes you most excited about like the next decade or until I have kind of like the year 2033 in my mind, where like 99% of all the Bitcoin are mined. I kind of see this next 10 years as kind of like the Bitcoin rush, gold rush, however you want to
Mhm.
define that. But yeah, I think a lot of things are going to happen next 10 years, especially also with like coming up of AI and like the convergence with Bitcoin and payments and stuff like that. Yeah, what makes you most excited?
I'm well, like from the business perspective, I'm really excited that again, and that's our like end game. That's our hypothesis that we want to onboard like TradeFi companies to the Bitcoin standard, and that's what excites me in that way. I mean, you going to any bank in the world or to the most banks in the world, and you are getting a loan, a credit card backed by Bitcoin, uh, a Bitcoin, savings address, whatever. I mean, but and they don't, and then they don't make big eyes, and they don't say, no, we're not going to work with you. I mean, that what excites me, an adoption in a way that it will be embedded in all the traditional financial tools that we're using at the moment. From the perspective of a Bitcoiner, I would say, again, I'm excited about mass adoption as always, but I'm also kind of worried because I see that with mass adoption there could be many or several issues coming in, and one of the issues that I also highlighted a couple of years ago, I actually heard that theory from one of my friends that there could be like a privacy war where one part of the community, of the Bitcoin community, will say, um, we're okay with the things as they go at the moment. We're fine with all the regulation, with all the KYCM or whatever. As long as price is like high, as long as we have this mass adoption going in, we're fine with that. Whether there's another part of community who will say, no, we're against that. We want to have a privacy. We want to have this and that. And there could be actually some kind of conflict within the community when one part of the community will say, we want to have Bitcoin in that way, and another part of community say we want to have a Bitcoin in this way. So that what worries me to some extent. And again, as a business owner and as a business developer, I'm pretty excited about like TradeFi companies coming into space, mass adoption, institutions embracing, nation states embracing. But as a Bitcoiner, I'm a bit worried that at some point we might be over-regulated um, as a private individuals, and that's actually a dilemma that I think a lot of Bitcoiners that are building businesses or doing some stuff in space or promoting Bitcoin or helping Bitcoin development are facing every month or every year or every day, whatever.
So I think it's interesting, right? When you think about the future like this, Bitcoin is a delicate thing, and I agree with you that there's always like different opinions. I don't want to say opinions. It's also kind of like ideas, ideology, something like that. But in the end, it's I like the phrase that is like, Bitcoin doesn't really care. Um, because if you
Yeah,
care about the things that you just mentioned, like you can fork off today, and you can try that today, and you can see if you can rally people behind that fork, right? I mean, that's has happened a few times before. But I think then it also comes back to these incentives that we mentioned before, right? Like, is there a way to like build on top of the this version of Bitcoin that is there right now, or would you like go on the journey of forking off and then mobilizing people, and then like it's I personally think that's kind of futile, but I do think that it's important that we never stop talking about Bitcoin in general and just like keep on educating people, because we're going to have these ideological or philosophical conversations, and I think that every trade-off or every change has kind of like its impact. Um, and it's just a very delicate conversation in a sense. I mean, if you look at like block size wars, I
yeah,
actually think the big block arguments were not bad, but they weren't good enough. You know, at least that's my opinion. So I mean, more like it's how do you say that? Like conceptually, it sounds nice, but when you dig deeper, it has like certain implications that are very bad, and therefore, in this example, we stayed with the smaller blocks, which I fully agree with. But like on the surface, it's easy to market than like the deeper conversation that is needed in order to actually figure out like what are the implications of any change. And I think that will never stop, to be honest. So we can brace ourselves for
no, there's always there's always will be some kind of drama in Bitcoin. I mean, it's again, it's too important, too exciting, too sensitive, as you
exactly.
said. So drama will always be there, and it's also like whether you like it or not, it's not just code; it's also money. And when there's money, and when there's a value that increases, when there's money, people getting sometimes people are just getting wild, and as the time goes, some people just getting like crazy with all the power that they think they have or all the wealth they have, and that just not every person can survive the humble task of Bitcoin, I would say. Unfortunately, that's part of the game.
Yeah, I talked with Max Kaiser once, and he said you come to Bitcoin as you are, and it will amplify who you are, and if you are a bad actor,
Yeah.
then that will eventually show. But I think that's with anything, and I think it's good to touch upon and just be aware of that, yeah, that's probably never ending. Yeah, man. I'd love to wrap up with my last question, and it's a question that I ask everyone, which is, what is a core belief that you will never let go?
Oof, that's a tough one. I have many of these, but I would say that as an independent individual, you need to have an opportunity to do whatever you want with your own private property or with your own money. So I would say that freedom of money, freedom of transaction, that's freedom of financial speech is a core value, and that's a very important thing. As important as freedom of speech, as important of any other freedoms, freedom of money is a crucial thing to any human being out there. You know.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing and thanks so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, let's stay in touch.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.